All right, don't let me mess this up one more time. Say your last name.
Pasquale.
See, we just don't have a lot of Italians in Texas. So the first couple of times I referenced you on the podcast, I called you Pasquale, but it's Tommy Pasquale.
Correct. Yeah, it's a common mistake though, so don't feel bad about it. Most people don't, and like you said, down in Texas, it's not a lot of Pasquales running around.
No, there's not. But we need more, and we did have one walking through the state some months ago in Tommy Pasquale. Man, I'm so proud to know you. We've only got a chance to meet very shortly on the set of Tucker Carlson tonight, but I'm glad to have some time to spend with you today. So, Tommy Pasquale, you're the man who walked across the country, coast to coast, Atlantic to Pacific. Why?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, Will. Of course, I'm happy to be talking to you again. I enjoyed our conversation the other day, although it was very brief. So I'm glad to be here talking with you further. I think really the reason I wanted to do it is one, always kind of thought of myself as someone who can do things that are a little out of the box, maybe a little special. And I saw this as an opportunity to do that. It's kind of been a goal of mine for, the past few years. It kind of came about during COVID when I was really sitting at home, had not much going on, and just walking around town doing 10, 15, 20 miles a day. The idea kind of came about, how long would it take to walk across the country? And it kept with me in the back of my head and, kind of just ate at me until I decided, let's go for this, while you're young, strong, and healthy before I had a job, but it wasn't, quite a career yet. It was my first job out of college. It had no, wife and kids, no real commitments to take care of back home. So I said, this is the time to do it. And then obviously wanted to, knew that it was going to probably get some attention. So, as a good marketing major that I was, never waste a good opportunity like that. So paired with the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans and was hopefully able to, raise some money for them and do a little good for someone else, while I, kind of fulfilled my dreams and hopefully help some people fulfill their dreams as well.
So that's awesome. So you decided on your own independently that you want to take on some kind of adventure. I'm curious, did you consider, I told you when we met in person, I've held similar, dreams that I'd love to canoe the Lewis and Clark path up the Mississippi and Missouri River into Montana. I'd love to ride a horse on one of the old famous cattle trails like the Goodnight Loving Trail from Texas up to Kansas, maybe even do what they did in Lonesome Dove and ride up to Montana. I've wanted to do things not unlike what you did, maybe even walk or hike the Appalachian Trail instead of coast to coast, go the entire Appalachian Trail. Did you consider a bunch of options, or was it immediately, no, you know what, I want to go Forrest Gump. I want to go coast to coast.
Yeah, there was a few things I thought in my mind that, would be kind of a cool journey and a cool mission. But early on, it popped in my head, going from coast to coast and, seeing this beautiful nation in a way that not a lot of people get to experience. So it was kind of, from early on the plan and I'm glad, it's obviously a long journey. There's definitely some journeys that I'm sure, my friends and family, they're a little bit shorter journeys that I'm sure they wished I picked. But it's definitely, something that, I kind of wanted to go full Forrest Gump on it and, go from sea to shining sea, as they say.
And what did your parents say when you said, hey, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to walk to California?
That's a great question. They were, I think at first everyone who I told thought I was joking. I am a bit of a jokester. I like to fool around. So I think they all were kind of confused and just like, what is this kid talking about? But then I think they realized and they saw it in my face that I was serious. And my parents, although they weren't super thrilled about the idea, I think they were, they're great parents and they were supportive and tried to help me in any way that I could in any way that they could once they realized that I was determined and that was my plan and that's what I was going to go forward and do. So I'm happy to have their support, even though I know it was tough for them and they were worried the duration of the trip.
What was their, I understand what you just said about their worry through the duration of the trip, and we're going to talk about some of those risks. But initially, what do you think was their biggest resistance? Was it they were worried about you being safe, or was it, what are you doing with your life? You have a job. Why would you quit and do this?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think at first it was, why you have a job, you work in New York, you got a pretty good decent life set up out of college here. You got a good thing going. Why would you do this? But I think it quickly turned into them just worrying about my safety, especially my mother. And I think, I think once they realized I was, determined to do it, it was really a point of safety. And they were just honestly kind of concerned for me being out there all by myself.
How old are you, Tommy?
25 years old.
Okay, and what's the job you gave up in New York?
I was working for a company. I was selling software. We did HR, payroll, and benefit software. So pretty good. It was a nice little gig. I thought what they had, the product they had, I kind of believed in, and I thought it was, helping some small to medium-sized businesses out. So I was happy to do it, but I always kind of thought there might be a little bit more out there for me. So I decided, this is the opportunity to really get it going.
Okay, so you quit that job. You want to find, as you said, something that's not just a job, but maybe the first step on a career. And you decide either as a first step or as a quick break before that first step, you're going to do this. You're going to check off the box of one of these dreams. You're going to walk coast to coast. Now, I want to know about the planning side of this. Like, you didn't just literally, I think, joked together about Forrest Gump. He just walked out the front door and started running. I'm sure that's not what you did, right? So you had to pick the path, figured out how to pack, what to wear, because this was 143 days. You were almost, what is that? Almost 5 months out there on the road. So tell me, when you okay, you're determined now to do this. How do you start planning?
Yeah, so the idea comes about right around Christmas time. So I kind of got in my head that this is what I'm going to do and I want to go forward and do it. So continued to work and kind of started just planning more or less the logistics of it, picking a route and doing all that good stuff. And I was in pretty good shape to begin with, young guy, and I exercise regularly and I'm, so I wasn't too worried about that. And then we get, forward to Memorial Day weekend, and I'm moving from the apartment that I'm living in to a house down the shore with a bunch of my buddies down at the Jersey Shore. So at that point at Memorial Day, I decided, all right, let's turn it all, focus it all on the walk. So left work and started walking on the beach every day, 10, 15, 20 miles, just to make sure my body was prepared, because I knew that was going to be probably the biggest challenge, was making sure I could handle it physically. And nothing gets you ready like walking in the sand. So walking in the sand pretty much every day, getting some good color and enjoying my summer. And towards the end of the summer, that's when I really told everyone I wanted to make sure that I was prepared and was able to do it before I go shooting off my mouth saying I'm going to walk across the country and not able to do it. So then I told everyone, and they were all kind of confused, worried, but, especially my friends, they know me. They know I'm a bit of a outside the box thinker. So they were asking me all these questions of if I was prepared or not. And, I gave them the answers that I think, satisfied them, that they were happy to hear, and they felt I was prepared, and I felt I was prepared. So I was excited to get going. Sad to leave them, but excited to get going.
So you decide in December, and then you work through Memorial Day while planning, and then you fit in one more summer at the shore before you take off walking in September. When did you leave? September?
September 19th. Yep.
Okay. And that last summer at the shore, that was important. Had to get in some of that beach time with your buddies.
Well, I already paid for the house, and honestly didn't know how I was going to go out there. It could have been the last summer out there, so I definitely wanted to take advantage of it.
Oh, and did you? Was that a good summer at the shore?
It was a good time. We definitely had a good time.
You are very Jersey. I've never done the Jersey Shore. What is that? Is that like all I know is the MTV show? I mean,
yes.
Are you GTL, Tommy? Are you Jim Tan? What is it? Jim Tan
It's
Lift?
Jim Tan Laundry.
Laundry.
And so it's not quite like that, although I will say, where they filmed that down in Seaside, it is kind of like that. But, if you're from Jersey, and especially I'm a nice, proud Italian boy, it's all my family, and every Italian from Jersey, or most Italians from Jersey, really don't care for that show. We think it gives us a bad name, and that's not really what the shore is like. I go up in a town called Manasquan. It's a little bit higher end. Some nice people, some good wholesome fun. Definitely your fair share of drinking and good times. We are 25-year-old guys, so we definitely get into some of those shenanigans. But it's a little bit more wholesome than you would see on MTV, for sure.
All right, you got to get out of your system before you go on a 5-month walk to California. Okay,
right.
I want to talk about the planning side of picking your route. I think that's fascinating. If I were sitting here tomorrow saying I'm going to walk from coast to coast, I actually think one of the most fun parts for me would be picking. I love maps. I love geography. I love exploration. I would love to envision myself as sort of a modern day explorer, but I would have a lot of fun picking that route. So as you're sitting there in New Jersey or in New York City in that office working, what did you pick and why, and how did you pick your route?
Yeah, so I knew early on in the route and up and down the East Coast, that's going to be places I've been to, places I've experienced before. And I knew starting in Tennessee all the way to California, those are going to be places that states I've never been to and cities I've never been to. So I was really excited for that, and I was excited to see some new places. I definitely put some major stops. Well, first off, I knew, leaving in September, it was going to get cold. So I wanted to get, first off, as south as I could, as fast as I could. So try and work my way down the East Coast. I started in New Jersey, into Pennsylvania, and from Pennsylvania into Maryland. I knew I wanted to stop in some major cities, so obviously wanted to stop in our nation's capital. I thought that would be a good stop. I always enjoy going to D.C. And then from there, headed from D.C. through Virginia. Saw some cool spots in Virginia. Virginia was kind of a pain to walk through. It's a nice, hilly, wide state. And then from there, got into Tennessee. And I got to say, Tennessee, I'd never been in Tennessee before. But I knew I wanted to go through Knoxville, check out University of Tennessee, and I wanted to go through Nashville because those are two places I've never been, and I had some buddies along the way that I knew I'd be able to stop and hang out with and enjoy myself. So Tennessee was a great time, and from there, felt like I was in Tennessee forever. That's a tough state too to walk through.
Long.
And long and hilly. But yeah, I mean, what Lee Greenwood says, from the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, he was not kidding. That is, it's tough terrain, but made it through.
Wait, pause it right here. Let's pause in Tennessee for just one moment.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the beginning because I want to travel the route with you as well, but I want to stay in planning for just 1 second. So it seems to me that planning your route, what you did is you identified, curiosity. You wanted to go some places that you'd not yet seen, and you had some major stops to visit some people as well along the way. So there were sort of like tent poles for your route that you were going to hit to help you map it out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that was pretty much out when I picked some major cities that I wanted to stop in, and then just kind of, because if you go on your, your Maps app on your phone or your Google Maps, you can't just put in, Venice Beach and set up a walking route. But you can set up from major city to major city. You can set up some walking routes. So I kind of pasted together, chunks at a time, from New Jersey, from Manasquan to DC, from, DC to Baltimore and Baltimore to, Nashville and so on and so on. So it's really in planning was just points of major cities on the map, and that's how I kind of chunked it out.
Did you use an app? Like, is there, I don't even know, is there a special hiking map or walking map that would have told you the best route to walk this distance?
Yeah, so I honestly just used a regular, Google Maps online
Really?
when I was planning for it. Yep, and just made sure I had it set to walking, and then every morning I would wake up and I would go into my map and I'd put 20 miles down the road, and I would just get to walking.
How did you plan for clothes? Because you probably had some idea at the outset how long this would take you. I mean, at least a ballpark range, meaning months. You knew, I don't know what you thought, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. But you knew you were going to be going through season changes, also making your way through different pairs of shoes. So, and it's all got to fit, I assume, in a backpack. Or I actually read you were pushing a cart as well. So, yeah, tell me about gear.
Yeah, so honestly, that was kind of the biggest mystery going into it. And I obviously tried to plan as best I could for that. But I knew that until I got out there, I wasn't going to be, totally prepared. And I knew that once I got out there, I was going to figure out what's important and what's not. So I packed as much clothes as I could. Because when I left, it was pretty hot. A lot of shorts, T-shirts, some hoodies, and some, winter jackets. I left with 2 pairs of shoes. And I figured that, I should travel as light as I can. And anything I need, I'll be able to buy along the way. I'll be able to stop at a Dick's or Sports Authority or whatever the case may be for what I need. And I realized, shortly in that I definitely packed a little heavier than I should. I wish I did pack a little lighter, especially, on the side of the clothes. But I, got some important clothes, got some safety precautions, a big knife with me, some pepper spray, got some food, a lot of canned goods, a lot of canned tuna and like Goya beans, just to keep me going, and beef jerky and just high protein snacks like that. But yeah, once I got pushing, I realized, I probably don't need half the stuff that I have, and I did kind of shed some of it on the way.
Did you push a cart the entire way, or did you pare yourself down to a backpack at some point?
No, I pushed a cart the entire way, and originally I left with a pretty light cart. It was like a cart that you would almost attach to the back of a bicycle to pull kids in, to pull little kids in. And it had some wheels, and it was like canvas outside. But truthfully, I got the thing online. It was a piece of crap. It didn't make it out of Pennsylvania. It broke on me 6 days in, and I said, I'm in the middle of kind of like Amish country in Pennsylvania, kind of in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, shoot. I was like, I'm just stuck here now. My wheels busted. And I called my buddies up. And I said, guys, I'm having a problem here. I think my parents at that point were excited because they thought, all right, he's coming home. It's over. But I called my buddies up and I said, hey, I need help. Can you help me? And they're like, don't worry about it. You go to sleep tonight, and when you wake up tomorrow morning, we'll be there. Just give us your location. We'll be there with a cart, and it'll be good to go. I'm like, all right. And I trust those guys. And they showed up with it was honestly a pretty impressive effort on their part. But they showed up with a shopping cart that they may have borrowed from Home Depot, and they had welded some big John Deere tires on it. And the thing was, we dubbed her the American Girl, and she was a beast. She was definitely not light, but she was sturdy, and she made it all the way from Pennsylvania all the way to Venice Beach. So I give them credit. They did a good job on that.
So you call your buddies, they show up with a Home Depot cart that they have customized with these big John Deere tires. That is some good buddies.
Yeah, they are good buddies. They're knuckleheads sometimes, but no one I'd rather have in crunch time than those guys. They always come through.
Okay, so now you've got the cart and a backpack as well?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and you've got clothes. You told me about clothes. On the shoe front, did you go hiking boots or did you go like running shoes?
I went running shoes.
Okay. And then you have a knife, you have pepper spray, you have canned food items of some kind. You have do you have a tent? What are your preparations for where you're going to sleep?
Yeah, I have a tent. I have a nice heavy-duty sleeping bag. I have, other than that in the cart, what else did I have? I had my big battery. It's kind of like, it was like the size of it's like an Anchor battery that you can juice up and just kept me connected and kept my phone charged the whole way.
So that was going to actually ask you that. How did you? Because
Yeah.
I know you had your navigation. I know you listened to the Cain podcast. How did you keep everything juiced up from this? Was it like a car battery? This had an adapter of some kind?
It's not quite a car battery. It's about the size of a car battery, but it's something you can buy. It's just like a portable battery. You charge it in a wall outlet, or I had a solar charger for it. So you juice it up, and honestly, the battery lasts a long time. I think it gives you like 30 charges of your cell phone, so it was good to go. And having it charged and everything juiced up was never an issue the whole trip, which was good. So I was connected the whole time.
Okay. All right, so that's what you have for the trip that you're taking with you. So let's go back now to the route. By the way, I can't figure out why you had to go to Pennsylvania. It seems like to go from New Jersey to D.C., you wouldn't go through Pennsylvania. Is my geography off, or did you cut west and then come back east?
I went. I started down in South Jersey, and I kind of just cut across Jersey. Where I cut across, I cut right across New Jersey. I was only walk through New Jersey for 3 days, and I cut into Pennsylvania. Honestly, I think the way the map has it set up, it gives you a little bit more direct route. And I think just based on it being more main roads that you can walk on, obviously you can't walk on the interstates. It kind of has you going through more major cities like Pennsylvania, or like Philadelphia rather, and down that way.
All right, so you walk through Pennsylvania. Now I'm curious a couple things. So you made your way from D.C. into Tennessee. So that means you crossed the Smoky Mountains or somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains. Was that hard?
Yes, sir. That was definitely hard. And at that point in the trip, it was early on enough where I was like considering just packing it in and going home. I was like,
really?
This sucks. This is brutal. I definitely didn't want to turn around. And it was my goal, from the time I left to make it to the end. I wouldn't have left if I didn't believe I could make it. But I definitely started to falter a little bit in the Smoky Mountains and right around the Appalachian Mountains. It was just tough. It was so tough, and I was in so much pain physically early on. But I knew that if I pushed through and I was able to overcome the pain, that I was going to be able to make it, and that it was going to flatten out at some point. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I persevered through it.
So how many miles a day did you walk? You said 20 earlier. Was your goal 20 miles every day?
Yeah, early on when I started the trip, my goal was 20 miles a day. Once I got past Dallas, I kind of thought, all right, it's kind of time to speed this thing up. It's time to get home. So I kind of kicked it up from there, from 20 miles a day to 25 or sometimes 30 miles a day. I think the most I ever did in a day was about 34 miles. I did that once or twice in the desert. So that was tough at the end, but by the end I was so physically adjusted to the rigorous routine that it kind of just felt all the same, 20 miles and 30 miles.
So did you stay in a tent every night, or were there places you stopped and stayed in a hotel or with friends?
Yeah, so tent most of the nights. Definitely, I was fortunate to have some buddies along the way that let me stay with them, and then some hotels in bigger cities where it's kind of harder to pitch a tent. And when weather got real poor, I stopped in some hotels.
What was the worst weather you had the entire way?
There was that cold front that came through earlier in the winter that kind of just froze the whole country, and at that point I was stuck almost Dallas, so just outside of Dallas, and there was 2 days in a row with the wind chill. It was like negative 10 degrees, and honestly I should have just relaxed those days and stayed in the hotel, but I was like, all right, I want to get walking. I don't want to get set behind. So I walked through 2 days in a row where it was like negative 10 with the wind chill. I was like, honestly, every part of my body that was covered up, I was fine, but my face and honestly, my eyes, I'm like towards the end of the second day, so delirious from the cold and the walking. I'm like, can your eyeballs freeze? I was like, and that's something I was worried about. I was like, could you imagine? I was like, I don't even know like what precautions to take for this, but I'm like, yeah, let's get in a hotel. Let's warm up here. Let's take a shower. And, but I made it through, but yeah, some cold days for sure.
What was the biggest, hurdle physically? Like, I can imagine my guess would be at some point, Tommy, like, I mean, I met you. You're definitely in shape. You're not overweight, but like, I don't even know. You're inside of your thighs rubbing all day, every day at some point from just walking, or who knows what, blisters on your feet. Like, what was the thing that hurt the most?
Yeah, I mean, the early on, especially the first few days and the first few weeks, I've never been in so much pain from everything from my lower back to my toes, just in so much pain, blisters, just so sore. But I think, as time went on, that that improved. And I was able to push through that. Definitely stretching was key and staying hydrated was key. But I think the thing that really just hurt most was, my feet. Just like the soles of my feet and like the tendons in my feet were always pretty sore, and my calves were the worst.
How many pairs of shoes did you go through on this walk?
10.
And every time you need a new pair, you stopped in somewhere and bought a new pair of running shoes?
Yep, I was fortunate to. I stopped in and bought a few pairs, but I got in contact with some companies, Newton Running, Hoka, and they were nice enough to, hear what I was doing and send me some sneakers along the way. So that was nice of them. How'd
you know when you needed a new pair, by the way? Like, I wear my workout shoes until they are done. Like, they're falling apart.
Yeah.
Was it that for you? I mean, or is it like, oh, these have lost a little spring in them, these have lost a little cushion, I need to re-up? Or were these things done?
That's usually how I am too. I'm going to wear my shoes into the ground until basically you can see, my toes sticking out. But on the first few pairs I wore, I was like, no, these things have a few more miles left in them. I got a few more days left in them. But then towards the middle, I'm like, all right, what's a few days? Get a new pair of shoes, man. You all you got is your feet. If your feet aren't, working right, you're screwed. You're not making it any further. I was like, these things are done. I want to say about 500 miles per pair you get through, or per two pairs.
All right,
I think was about the rule that I followed.
Let's figure this out. So we don't have to go mile by mile and state by state, although I'm tempted to do that. But as you're walking across the country, it sounds like from Tennessee you cut southwest to hit somewhere outside of Dallas. So you probably did some Arkansas, maybe a little Oklahoma to do that. I don't know. You may have done Mississippi because I don't know when you dropped out of Tennessee. But you can tell me more about that route while telling me this. What were you most blown away by? Like, when you're walking across the country, you'd been to some of these places, a lot of these places you said you'd never seen. Like, where was it you looked up and you're like, I never realized this was so beautiful?
It's so interesting. Like, the physical beauty of this country is so great. And especially because the country and the landscape of this country is so diverse. You could be, I start on the beach, and within a few days, I'm in the forest, and then a few days from there, I'm in a farm, in like farmland, and then I'm in the rolling hills and to the desert. So there's so many just different terrains and beautiful parts of this country. I would say that I'm more used to kind of like East Coast, woodsy looking areas. That's just kind of what I'm used to and what I grew up with. So when I got into parts of really in like Arizona in the desert, just like seeing the night sky and how clear the stars are and how many more stars you can see. Because I always thought, you could see some pretty good stars out here. And even in like Tennessee, I was like, wow, you can see a lot of stars here. But, I was in the desert camping out in my tent and I look up and you could almost like see like I don't know how you describe it, but like I always like call it, you like see the Milky Way and you could just see all the stars. And I was like, wow, that is so crazy to me. It's just so beautiful. It's just not something I'm super used to. So it's definitely a cool change.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I grew up an hour outside of Dallas, small town. And then I went to school in California, outside of Los Angeles. And I'll never forget, I used to drive what you're talking about. I drove I-40 through northern Arizona, through northern New Mexico. And my buddies and I, other Texans that were out there, we did this trip several times. And we would just stay in motels, along a railroad track, somewhere between the interstate and a railroad track. There'd be these motels. And you'd go outside, exactly what you're saying. You never knew there were so many stars. You don't realize how much light pollution you're actually swimming in. Even when you think you're not. I'm sure when you're on the Jersey Shore, stand on the beach, you're like, oh, look at this compared to New York City. But even that, compared to Sherman, Texas, compared to Gallup, New Mexico, right? You keep going further into this desert, and you're like, look how little light there is. And then yet, weirdly, how much natural light there is off the stars and the moon.
Right. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable.
So, okay, that's where you're most blown away by the beauty. What about where you were the most, outside of weather, what about where you were most terrified? Like, was there ever a moment where you felt in danger?
Yeah, there was definitely a few moments where I felt like I was in danger. I think, honestly, the most dangerous thing, and it's not super glorious. I think everyone wants to hear about, like running into wild animals or stuff like that. But man, people drive like animals, and I'm on the shoulder of some of these roads. Man, there was a few times where I had to just like jump out of the road and then like into the grass. But I think the time I was most scared was honestly on the fourth night. So pretty early on, I've gotten past Philadelphia, and I'm just kind of in like the Pennsylvania countryside, and I was camping in my tent next to an old abandoned barn, and I had gotten off the phone with a friend of mine, and I hung up the phone with her, and it's really windy that night, but in between these big wind gusts, I can hear like coyotes howling, and I'm like, okay, coyotes, not a huge deal, they're like in the distance, and then in between every wind gust, they sound like they're starting to get a little closer and closer and closer until eventually, gust of wind, and I hear these coyotes howling. I'm like, oh, shoot, like they're right outside the tent. It sounds like there's a lot of them. So I kind of hop out of the tent. This is day 4, and I got my knife with me. I'm like, what am I going to do? Take on a pack of coyotes here? And I see them. I could see them all there, and they're like looking at me. I'm like, get out of here, scram, whatever. I'm throwing rocks at them, just trying to get them away. And they went away. But at that point, it was kind of a good lesson early on in the trip. I was like, you need to be prepared. You need to at all times be able to, I don't want to say fight, but like be ready to get after it, because honestly, you're not going to know, and you don't want to hesitate. You want to be ready for that situation when it comes, that if you need to kind of get down, like you're going to have to get down.
Man, I don't think I would have been nervous about wildlife. I think I would have been nervous about people. Mm-hmm. Like I'm sitting in that tent somewhere next to an abandoned barn. I'm scared of and nothing against the Amish, but if I'm in Amish country, some crazy ass Amish serial killer is going to come get me in my tent. Or if I'm in Arizona, some ghost, riding the wind is going to come. I don't know, man. I would have made up stuff around people that would have come and terrified me in my dreams.
There was definitely some times, especially like where I was set up there next to this abandoned barn. I'm like, this is like the beginning of a horror movie, man. Like you're about to get slashed up.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, absolutely.
But you never had any bad encounters with people?
There was a few sketchy people along the way. There was one specific time where I had stopped and pitched my tent, and these 2 fellows came by, and they seemed like they were tweaking on something a little bit. They were a little bit off. And there's a lot of that. I saw a decent amount of that. There seems like there's a lot of people who are out there kind of, drugged up or whatever the case may be. But they seem like there was something going on.
Where was this?
And they walked by me, and they're like, this was in I want to say it was right outside Morristown. Was Morristown, Tennessee, or Morristown, Virginia? I think it's Morristown, Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah,
so some Tennessee tweakers
Tennessee.
are creeping around outside your tent.
Yeah, and they come up, and I'm setting up my tent, and I've already walked for a long time. I've been walking 22 miles that day, and they're like, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm walking across the country, raising money for the vets." I have my whole spiel set up, and they're like, "All right, man, we'll see you later." And I'm like, what does that mean? I was like, oh man, I do not want to be here and find out what that means when they come back. I'm like, shoot. So I pack up the tent. And I'm like, I gotta move now. I was like, these guys can't know where I'm staying at. I was like, this sucks. So I walked another, 5 miles down the road and just got out of there. But yeah, there's definitely some sketchy people along the way for sure.
So were you pitching your tent just next to the side of the road? Or were we looking for KOA camps? Like where were you spending the night?
Yeah, if a KOA camp was like a golden goose, get to stay there, get a nice fresh shower. That was a good spot. But other than that, stayed, knocked on the doors of some VFWs and some, what's the other one? American Legions. And they were always really cool and let me pitch a tent there. Sometimes fire departments and churches let me pitch a tent on their property somewhere. But then sometimes just kind of off the road, especially in more desolate places like the desert, just kind of like go a few dozen yards off the road and just kind of pitch right there.
Wow. And cooking meals on like a little burner stove, your canned goods. If you weren't in a city or someplace where you could stop and eat, did you do a lot of that, like campfire cooking?
I did some campfire cooking. Honestly, just mainly ate everything out of the can cold.
Really?
Kind of ate the tuna, ate the beans. Towards the end especially, I'm like, golly, like this is no good. I started eating a decent amount of like fast food towards the end just because I was sick of the canned goods. But yeah, mostly just cold food and some warm meals at some restaurants and stuff when I got a chance.
So I know you listen to the Cain podcast. We've talked about it. I know you listen to it on the walk, which I really am like super, not flattered, humbled by. It's just so, you may have heard me already talk about this, but I mean, man, to think that I got to, it just sounds weird because I didn't, but I can't help, I don't know how to explain it emotionally. I did spend that time with you. And it's like, I know that probably feels like more so for you. You told me that because my voice was in your ears as you walked across the country. But like to think that I got to accompany you on this, like it's just, I don't know, man. It's incredibly humbling. But I would love to know, like that past summer before you went, I did a podcast with a guy named Colin O'Brady, and he's an adventurer who's walked across Antarctica, and I think he's climbed the 7 peaks and all kinds of things. And he encourages everyone to go for a 12-hour walk. No phone, though, completely disconnected. And he said, you're going to find out stuff about yourself. So I would love to know, I mean, do you think you did? 5 months walking across the country, a lot of times, most of the time by yourself, a lot of times out there maybe in the desert alone. I mean, it's kind of trite to say, did you find yourself? But did you find out something about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I heard the podcast that you did with Colin O'Brien, and he's definitely an interesting character. But I enjoyed that one, and I enjoyed what he had to say. But yeah, there's definitely some truth to that. I don't want to say that, I found myself out there, like it was some sort of like hippy-dippy spiritual thing, but you definitely learn stuff about yourself and the world around you. I would say that if you're not confident in who you are as a person and your character before you leave, I don't think you're going to find yourself out there. I think that you need to be sure of yourself before you go on a journey like this. Otherwise, you might just get lost in the sauce out there. But I definitely, I had more time than I'd like to just to kind of sit and think by myself. And I definitely thought of a lot of things, and I definitely, came to some realizations just with all that time and thought. And obviously, learning some things, just traveling and being on the road and being on a journey like that. I learned some things and learned a little bit about myself and my ability to persevere. So you definitely, I do encourage everyone to get out every day and go for a walk. Obviously, I wouldn't, encourage everyone to go and walk across the country. I think that's a little much. But definitely go out and walk every day and disconnect, and just, be alone with your thoughts a little bit and get a little exercise too. I think it would help, a lot of people out, more than they realize.
Did you figure out, for example, what it is you want to do for a career? You said you had a job that you didn't think you wanted to be your career. Mm-hmm. Did you come away from this walk knowing what you want to do next?
I have some ideas. There's definitely, some things that I want to accomplish. I want to, and currently I am writing a book about this journey and about this mission, and I'm hoping that people read it, enjoy the story, and are hopefully able to grab some inspiration that they can bring into their own life as well. And I also would like to, I'm looking for a job right now. I'd like to work in media in some type of capacity. I was fortunate during this walk to get some media attention from all different places and sources, and I really enjoyed that and working with those people, whoever it was, in whatever capacity it was. And I just feel like they're very like-minded to what I have, what I want to accomplish as well. So that's kind of what I want to do moving forward and get into that field. I'm a business major by trade, so not sure how that'll work out and translate, but I'm a hard worker, and I'm able to. I'm a pretty quick learner, so I figured I'd be able to figure it out pretty quickly.
Maybe you and I will have more to talk about after this is over. I want to ask you this, man. A couple more questions. What was your low point?
Ooh, my low point was. There was a few low points, but I think my lowest point was in the Appalachian Mountains, pushing the cart up these hills. I really got to a point where physically I was hurting so bad, and mentally I was just missing home so much that I did want to pack it in. But before I left, my buddy had actually given me this. It's not a poem. It's a speech that Teddy Roosevelt gave. It's called "The Man in the Arena." I don't know if you've ever heard it, but I encourage everyone to go and look it up. But he talks about, it's not the doer of deeds. It's not the critic who counts. It's the doer of deeds, the one who's in the arena, whose face is marred by blood, sweat, and tears. And it really kind of puts things into perspective that, I'm out here doing it. People might think I'm crazy, but I'm the one out here doing it. And if I can make it through, that's all that counts. So that was probably the lowest point. There was definitely a lot of low points on the way, but I'm happy I persevered through it and made it through.
I love that speech from Teddy Roosevelt. Only for me outdone by Rudyard Kipling's "If." If you haven't read that one, read "If" by Kipling, and I think you'll like that. I know it was a low point outside of Dallas, by the way, in which case you should have figured out a way to get in touch with me. I didn't know you were doing this, but you would have had an open invitation to stay at my house for one night. Or not one night, whatever it is. I don't know how big your breaks were, but I'm serious, you could have stayed here. So now, your high point. What was the best moment of the whole trip?
Yeah, there was a lot of good moments on the trip. It was definitely tough, but I tried to, obviously enjoy the journey and not just focus on the destination. I would say I got to do some cool things. I got to stop in Knoxville and visit my buddies, and we went to Neyland Stadium and got to see Tennessee play Kentucky, which is a big top 25 matchup. Never been to Neyland Stadium. That was Rocky Top was rocking that day. That was great. Got to go to the CMAs in Nashville, which was really cool. And I think probably the highest point, though, had to, as corny as it is, had to be at the end when I, hit the Pacific and I got to see all my friends and family.
That's awesome. By the way, they were waiting for you? They'd all flown to California and they were waiting for you? So where did you meet them? Was your plan to go all the way to the ocean? So did you go to, Venice or Santa Monica? Where did you hit the Pacific?
I went in at right in at Venice Beach over there, right by Muscle Beach. Did some pull-ups on my way away to the waves. Yeah, popped in right there, and they were all waiting for me. A bunch of them were waiting for me. So it was obviously, I have great friends and great family, and I'm so appreciative of all of them and all their support. I was happy to see them all there. It's probably the happiest I've ever been to see them. I told them, you guys are a motley crew, but I've never been so happy to see y'all.
All right. That's awesome. And finally, we can't end this conversation without talking about, you did raise over so far about $100,000 for homeless vets. Why did you pick this cause and this charity to be the one that's the beneficiary of this walk?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, we're up to about 125 now. After we talked the other day, we got a nice little bump, so I want to thank you for that. We definitely got a nice little spike in donations. But yeah, I picked the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. I've always been a patriotic guy, brought up in a family who has proud veterans in my family who have served. So I've always, even growing up, was taught to respect veterans and respect their service. And anytime you see a uniformed soldier, say thank you for your service. So I knew I wanted to help them out in any way I can. And especially, I feel like it's very tumultuous time in this country. Everyone feels so divided. And I figured this is something that's not a blue issue. It's not a red issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue. And that all people could get behind, getting these brave men and women the respect they deserve and helping them get off the streets. So in my research there's obviously many different charities you can help the veterans through, but in my research, I found the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Love their mission of ending veterans homelessness. They got great scores on, all the metrics that, all the money goes straight to the veterans. And there's no, funny business. And called them up and said, hey, this is what I'm doing, and they're like, well, hell yeah, like, we're in. Like, if that's what you want to do and you want to pick us, like, we're all for it, man. Tell us what you need. And so there are a lot of great people over there, and I'm glad I was able to help them out and hopefully in turn help some of the veterans as well.
That's awesome. And so where can people go? I'm so happy you got a bump from our appearance together on Tucker Carlson. So people listen to the Will Cain podcast. They want to keep giving back to what you've already started. How can they do that?
Yep, there's two ways you can donate. You can go to my Instagram at Tommy_walks_America, and there's a link in my bio to a GoFundMe where you can donate. Or you could also go straight to the nchv.org website, which is their direct website, and you can donate there as well.
Man, Tommy, I'm really appreciative of what you've done. I'm really appreciative that I got to spend some time with you virtually on this walk. And I'm really appreciative that you've spent some time here telling us about it. You're cool. You're a cool guy who's done an awesome thing, and I'm proud to know you. Thank you, Tommy Pasquale.
Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate you having me on again. It's great talking to you. And my parents say thank you again for letting them look around the studio and hang out as well. They wanted to make sure I got that in there as well.
That's absolutely. They're welcome. All right, man. Take care. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.